Hello everyone. You can say hi, ask questions in the comments, but definitely needed to have a quick Q&A today to address a post that I posted yesterday. So most of you saw my post, and I asked, what am I making in this particular video? Sorry, in this particular picture. And I got so many different answers. And as a chef, it made me want to address something even deeper than just what was in the picture. So for me, becoming a chef was one of those things where food was always part of my everyday upbringing. Food was always something that I enjoyed completely, but it was also that one thing that was a safe space, but also where family came together, all boundaries were taken away, and you can just be free to do whatever you wanted. And when I asked the question yesterday online, what am I making? The answers were all over, but it had one great thing in common. Everybody was pretty much right. It was just depending on where you came from, depend on how you would answer the question. And so it made me to think, and I'm just want to put this in layman terms. When we talk about slavery, and we talk about immigration, and we talk about the migration of people across the world, one of the things that is very clear is one of the things that they bring is always their cuisine. And when they bring their cuisine, it comes as a natural form and then it adapts to wherever they land. Meaning, if you come from Africa and then you come to the Caribbean, depending on what ingredients are there, you will adapt your recipes towards what's there, your resources that are there. If you're from Africa and you come to America, you'll adapt to resources that's there, or to England, or to Europe, or to anywhere else in the world, or to Asia. So when we started talking about food cuisines, I wanted to just say something so simple. Food is one of the things that drives us all. And the dish that I was making in particular was from Honduran / Belize or Garifuna cuisine. So the dish that I was making was called a Yucca cake, or in the Garifuna culture, they call it Dani. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because there's so many variations of this particular dish. So if you're from Honduras or Belize, you'll call it Dani. Okay. If you are from, say for instance, if you're from Fiji, it is called Vekalolo, if I say that correctly. If you're from Antigua, you might say Ducana. If you're from Barbados, you'll say Conkeys. If you're from Jamaica, it's Blue Draws. If you're from Puerto Rico, it's Pastel de Yucca. If you're from Africa or Angola, it's Baton de Manioc. But literally, they're all very similar in meaning. So it's a yucca-based cake, or yucca that's used to as the vehicle for flavor. So even though the cooking methods are very similar, some use slightly different ingredients. So for instance, for the Fiji and Filipino, so Filipino call it suma, suma cakes. So for them, it's a very simple, it's just yucca, coconut, and sugar. That's it. Then if you from Jamaica, it's actually cornmeal base. If you're from Trinidad like myself, we use pay which is actually same thing, cornmeal. If it's Antigua and you use Ducana, it's sweet potato. It's conkeys, it's cornmeal. So basically a lot of the dishes that we're talking about, everyone knows from their childhood as something slightly different, but at the same time has the very similar. So when I made this dish yesterday, there was two of them that I made. So this one, okay, is called the Dani, okay? So basically I took yucca and grated it. And you grate the yucca, you strain it off a little bit. I grated sweet potato. There's some spices in there with coconut milk, and you mix it, and then you wrap it in the banana leaf and steam it. You can bake it over fire. There's multiple different ways to do it. Some people do it with the sweet potato, without the sweet potato, with spices, without spices. Like I said, it all depends on where you're from, would depend on what you call it. So a lot of people from Trinidad was asking if it was pone. Pone for us is very similar ingredients. Sometimes we add sweet potato, pumpkin to the yuca, but then it's baked. It's not steamed. So hence that's the biggest difference, that it's not wrapped in the banana leaf and steamed. Then the other one that I made was called the yucca cake, right? So the yucca cake, as you can tell, the texture is a lot more gooey, which I really like, because when I make pone from Trinidad, it's always crusty, and I like to fight for the jelly part. So with the yucca cake, you can actually get all of it to be the jelly because there's no bacon involved, so it's not hard. It's almost like a steamed yucca cake. So as you can tell, it's nice and gooey, and it has a little jiggle to it, but it's really good. And it's same thing. You grate the yucca, and the tool that I actually use, I want to share with you guys exactly what it is. Give me 1 second. So these things here, okay, they don't look like much, but they're a Honduran grater, and it's called a rallador. And this is really used in a lot of Garifuna cuisine or culture. And basically it's a piece of wood that river stones have been embedded in it. And this is what you use as your grater. So you take the yucca, the coconut, sweet potatoes, and you just grate it against this, and you get a very fine, a nice paste. So instead of getting like shreds, you get more of a paste. So it tends to give you the right consistency that you're looking for these dishes. So I really wanted to share this with you guys because I do feel like, depend on what part of the world we're from, we call things differently. But because we all have ancestry in very similar places, or we all come from similar ancestry, we call same dishes different names that has been adapted across countries, across islands, to something else. But at the same time, they all are very similar for all of us. So like I said, the dish that I was making is called Dani, or the yucca cake. So you can see the two differences here. All right, I'll post pictures online for you guys to kind of see the process, because it is a little labor of love. All right. And the reason why I'm finding myself going back to foods like this, because as a younger person, food culture has become very quick, very fast. No one wants to do dishes that are labor intensive. So one of the things, like when you start using this to grate coconut, yeah, some people be like, oh, you just put it in a food processor. The texture is completely different. It produces more water once you use the food processor, and you don't get the fine fine ground that you need. So sometimes you do have to go back to the traditional and use tools such as this. And it's also the reason why we would always use a phrase, oh, when my grandmother made it, it was so much better. Now that we're trying to make it, oh yeah, it tastes good, but it's not the same, because as we know, everything they did, they put their back into it. They put a lot of love into it. They tasted, they talked, they sang when they cooked. Cooking wasn't a chore, but it was a joy. It was one of the few things that was able to be used as a tool to get away from the struggles of life. Because as we all know, we all love to eat, right? So when you start talking about these types of things, it just makes it all worth it. So know that nobody's answer was wrong, but at the same time, everybody's description of it means something different to them depending on where you're from. So I want to acknowledge all the different ways that you can call it. But the dish that I was making was different from where I'm from, which I would say pone if I didn't know. But the banana leaf is really the huge distinction from pone, which is a baked, to the yucca being steamed in the banana leaf, which is now the Dani or the yucca cake. All right. So like I said before, just to go over, if you're from Barbados, you might call it conkeys. Antigua, it could be ducano. Jamaica, blue draws. Fiji's Vikalolo. If you're from Africa or Angola, it's baton de manioc, which is basically a stick of yucca. If you're from Puerto Rico, pastel de yuca. All right. If you're from the Filipino, it's suman or cassava suman. And then if you're from Honduras or Belize or your Garifuna, it's definitely the Dani or the Honduran or Yucca cake. All right. So that's all, folks. If you have questions, feel free to put it in the comments. But I really thought this was important to share because I do feel like it needed a little more explaining. So thanks you guys for tuning in. That is it. If you have questions, feel free to inbox me or send me a message, okay? I appreciate the love. Take care and have a wonderful and blessed day. Bye.